Welcome to 3Oul Sisters. I'm so excited that you could join us today. I'm your host, Lorna Katasa Jemima, and with me I have a brilliant 3Oul sister, Dr. Honorable Agnes Atim, who is the founder of the Hope Development Initiative, but she is also she was also elected the woman representative of the Amulata district. We're going to get into those details shortly after. I just want to encourage you to please continue to comment and share on all our different social media platforms. And I would also like to thank Dotash Exclusive for hosting us and giving us this space. It has very beautiful furniture. You can find them at Spear House. Their furniture is very affordable, very comfortable, and of course very, very unique. You're going to make your home beautiful and elegant. Now let's dive in with our dearest 3Oul sister, Honorable Dr. Atim Agnes.
Thank you.
Yes, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, and
yes.
Thanks for hosting me in this very beautiful space.
Yes.
Yes.
Could you tell our viewers about yourself?
Oh, myself is a long story, right?
Yes.
Yes, like you rightly said, I'm Dr. Agnes Atim Apea, a woman representative of Molata district.
Yes.
And yes, it's true that I work with the community.
Yes.
And so I founded the Hope Development Initiative in 2010, at a time when I'd come back from the United Kingdom to do my research on, I was doing a PhD in international development and economics. And so I came home to do research. And my research was participatory development in a post-conflict area. And you're aware that Molatar is in the central Lango region, where we had over 20 years of war. And so at that time, people were going home, and I wanted to see how best can our people participate in the process. Remember, at a time where everyone was in the IDP camp, and now people are coming home. And I saw a lot of NGOs, a lot of government investment, but our people were like spectators. I'm like, come on, we need to be a part of rebuilding our community, our future, and our infrastructure. So that's how I founded Hope. And my interests were specifically on women. And then I asked them, I just started with 30 women of my focus group discussions. And I was asking them, how best do you think we can join in the post-conflict recovery and development? That's where the idea of RISE came. And they told me, for us, we are farmers, we don't know anything else, we are not educated. Of course, they are building schools for our children, but if we do not have anything that will bring money to our hands, it will be difficult. Then we agreed, fine, let's go and farm. Then we started asking, so which crop? Because, you know, we had used to do cotton, maize, beans, and so everything was not making a lot of sense. And remember, they want to start a new life. So that's how rice came. And we said, there's this crop called rice. Of course, we didn't know we could grow it. We couldn't grow it.
Yes.
And so we decided, let's go for the rice because of two things. One, it's a very nice crop. And it's always a very big issue around festive seasons.
Yes.
Because we would only eat rice during festive seasons anyway. So that is when now we decided we are going to grow this rice to give us income that we can use to address our livelihood challenges. So I came to Narrow. They gave me the seeds, and it was a new crop. We had never grown it. We didn't even know how it looked like.
It had never been grown,
in that area. Yes, and yet it was a very prestigious kind of crop. It had a lot of gender issues, equity issues and stuff. Women would get very good beatings during Christmas and you know, festive seasons. And so that's how we started rice. And eventually like the women adopted it, they started growing. Rice became all over the place.
Yes.
So children, whenever I would pass, children would be eating rice and saying, oh, that's mama rice in the local language, right?
Yes.
Oh, maruchere, something like that. Yeah, so that's how I became mama rice.
Just like that.
Just like that. And because I think in our cultures, in our communities, when you bring something, a seed, or you bring a particular, maybe a goat or a cow or something, they start it with your name.
Of course.
So that's how I got Mama Rice.
Yes.
I come from a family of only girls.
Oh.
We were born 8 girls, and I'm the firstborn.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we lost 5 at a very young age, and mainly because I lost my parents too at a very young age. And because I was the head of family at, I think, around 15 years old, I couldn't really sustain, looking after the younger ones and all that. And so that alone in my community comes along with a lot of vulnerability, a lot of marginalization. And I'm a grown of Idi Amin's time, right, in the early 70s. And so at that time, even up to now, it's really still there that girls are really not considered children.
Yes.
And I saw that firsthand in my family, that my father would really stand up and say, look at this woman with her useless girls, right? In communities, my mother was really an outcast. My parents would be so violent, would be chased away in the house with my mother and her useless children. And so I grew up in that environment where, as a girl, and in a family of all girls, I was really the most, in the community, was the most useless thing.
Yes.
So then I grew up with this anger as a girl that I want to prove to this world and to this community that girls are actually not as useless as they think. And so all my life has been driven with that motivation of stopping the stereotypes and stopping the marginalization. Not stopping per se, but confronting it. To say, come on, look here. We are all human beings, whether girls or boys. We really all, children. And so we should be treated in the best way possible. That then drives me to my academic background, educational background.
But before we get to your academic background, you have talked about growing up with your 8 girls in a community that does not consider. How was that like?
I mean, like I said, I think it's the most difficult situation a child would grow up in.
Yes.
Because at that particular time, when at the earliest age, I think up to around 10, I didn't understand it well, but I understood it quite well at my later primary school, like around P7, around, when I could now understand the whole issues. But when we were growing up, of course, at one point you would find our mother is out. All of us are out of the house. And of course, my father had as many women as he wanted, because he was looking for boys, So it felt, it felt really bad. You feel useless, as a child. And you feel that you do not have that space you can call home. This is your father who is standing up and saying, you're useless with your mother just because you're a girl. And so it's quite a very difficult experience that I wouldn't wish any child to undergo.
Yes.
It was not only from my father, but the whole community. I think up to now, women are suffering out there very silently because you cannot give your husband a boy. As a girl that has grown up in that environment, I completely understand the women. And why? Because we've not stood up to say no and this must stop. Yeah? And I think that's the reason my mother had 8 children. Yeah. And really after a very short time, because she was looking for a girl. And so for women out there, I think this thing of looking for a boy and a girl, first of all, it is not a woman who determines the sex of a child.
Yes.
And this was a poor man who didn't, I don't know whether he knew, but he shifted the whole blame from himself to my mother. And so I think as women, we need to educate ourselves as well and educate our children that every child is equal. Girl or boy, they are the same children that we should appreciate when God gives us, and leave this thing of making it appear that having a girl, you as a woman, you are also a problem. That's not the case. It's a man who decides. That's biology, that's science.
I think that in that aspect on who determines the sex of a child, very many Ugandans, not just Ugandans, I think it's worldwide, where very few people know who determines the sex of the child. Yes, and I think that's something we should educate on.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, so you never had a relationship with your father?
I wouldn't say so, although at a later time, he became my friend. But at that early period, I looked at him as the biggest cause of my problem. First of all, I felt that my not going to maybe a good school or having the best I could have, in my head at that time, I thought it was because I was a girl, which to some extent I think it's true. Because it reached a point that my father would abandon my mother and us, the children, and go away with other women. And we could just hear, fortunately enough, wherever he went, he would also still have girls. I think apparently he had only one boy who is much younger than me, and that's with another woman. But at the later time, of course, unfortunately, my mother died without seeing how these useless girls have become. Unfortunately, she died, I think, when I was about 17 years old. And also my father died immediately 2 years after that. But I saw my father coming back to me, who is a firstborn, as the only thing, actually, that he had. Because apparently I was the eldest, and all the other children were young. I didn't see the rest of the women that he was running after to get a boy. I didn't see any boy, but it was really, it was quite a difficult environment. That yes, at one point I really forgave him, and I also realized, like you rightly said, I think it's lack of awareness, but also I didn't blame him because it is a societal kind of stereotypes. That it is not him, but the society requires that when you need to have a boy to be a heir of your home. So somehow I really forgive him, although I still don't forgive the societal kind of prejudice against girl child. I come from Lira. And so I was raised in Bonn, both Lira and the Molata now used to be Lira. So I was born, raised in Lira, and got married in Lira. Now I'm actually settled in the greater Lira, but now in what is called a Molata district. Yeah. Fortunately, my early childhood was a good one, because my dad was working in Kampala, was working in the president's office then.
Amazing.
And I used to live not very far away from here. Those houses on Crescent Towers Road, those 3 houses. One of them in the middle there. That's where I grew up from my early childhood. And I went to Chimoni from P1 to P3. That was around 83. And of course, when the war started, is when I went back to Lira and had my primary school in the present day Molatar, my primary 7, and then I went to St. Catherine in Boroboro, which is in Lira. And after that, I went for my A-level in Awelo Secondary School, which is in the current Molatar, but at that time was in Lira. So I'm this kind of child who was not really exposed as much to go to other regions and go to big schools, because the environment dictated all the situation. And yes, after A-level is when I went to actually Ngeta. That time it was teacher training college. So I started as a teacher. Then I came to Makerere and did Bachelor of Commerce, Accounting. And I went for my master's in Uganda Matters, and I did master's in Development Economics. And then I had 1 year at the US in New York, Columbia University, for a fellowship in human rights and financing. And then after that 1 year fellowship in the US, I had 5 years in the UK doing my PhD. Yes, in international development and economics.
Yes. So we're going to go back step by step.
Yes.
We don't want our viewers to miss anything.
I know.
Yes. So in primary, what was your father's occupation?
Oh, my father was an accountant.
Yes.
Yeah, he was
working
an accountant, working with government, and office of the president. At one time, he was working in the current Chambogo University. It used to be a polytechnic, Chambogo Polytechnic, I remember at that time.
How's your primary school life? Was it easy for you to make friends? How was school?
No, I think primary for me was very interesting. At that time, Chimboni was really one of the best schools in the country. And of course, I was living very close here. I would just walk across to school. Yeah, it was quite interesting that studying in Chimboni exposed me to various, different people at that time. There were children coming from all over, the place going to school. And I think that was a very good formative years. But remember from 1980 or Bote 2, there wasn't any time that you would have like a peaceful kind of environment. But most times they were really, you'd hear bombs there, you'd hear guns there, and the streets and all that. So I think some of us who grew up during the war time, like I was born during Amin's time, I grew up in Bote 2's time, and and secondary in Kony time, and my childhood has been very difficult, mad with a lot of insecurity, a lot of political turbulence, and I think I'm one of those children who could have been a soldier, because everything around us at that time were really so militaristic, it was so much war, so much disturbance really. And I think we are lucky that we survived through, because most of my generation are very few, really, especially from our part of the world, where people got abducted and living in internally displaced camps. Many people did not really manage to make it, and that's why I always say that I'm a testimony of children, of the war-affected children, who have really tried to maneuver through the ways, and I've found myself, I'm still here, and I'm surviving, and really I thank God for that. Even when I joined secondary in St. Catherine, that was I think 1988, then we had the Karamojong coming all over the place. We had so many people abducted, so many children abandoned school, because it wasn't really safe. You were rather safer with your parents together, maybe in a bush somewhere. Challenge. And even through secondary school, through 88 up to 91, that was Kony War, 311. When we went back from Chimon in 1983, and I went to a VH public school in Lira in 1984, then we had the war of 1985. And so that we had to run away. 85 years, then we had to run away. I think we spent there around 1 or 2 years without going to school, because there was really all the turbulences and all that. And in that manner, I didn't finish P5, neither did I study in P6. And then we ran away to the current Amolatar and sat in 87, P7.
Just like that.
Just like that. And so fortunately for me, my mother, I don't know what they could call it now. It would be like a homeschooling, but of course in a local way. Just because she managed, I don't know, to collect books from where, up to tomorrow, I still don't know. But even if we were running and we were taking shelter somewhere, my mother would be there with some book for primary school, for maths, and for English and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's why I did better in maths, because the only thing you could do alone was really maths, because you had a book and you could follow it and all that. So really, generally from my part of the world, for children born in the 70s, it was a very rough time for us. Very, very difficult time.
I am so intrigued, and I'm sure all our viewers are. Yes. So your mom, where was she you said you don't know where she was getting these books from. Was she a housewife, or she had... No, she was a housewife, but I think her living here, and she wasn't educated really. My mother stopped in primary 6 and got married when she was very young. And of course, right now it has improved a bit, but our time and my mother's time,
a girl did not have any power to make any decision. If your parents get a husband for you and they make a good connection and talk to the other family, for you, your job was just to pack. Of course, there was even nothing to pack anyway, and go and be a housewife. So she was this very young, beautiful woman who was married to a working man. And the man, fortunately, was working in Kampala and is an accountant. So somehow, I think when she lived in Kampala, she got those networks and friends and had now the idea of making your children to read books. And she was the most passionate person around education. And when she was dying, her last words would be, "My children study. There is nothing else you're going to get in this world other than through education." And maybe that's why I picked up education with a lot of passion. And I said, I have to fulfill the dream of my mother. But this housewife who was exposed into knowing that there's a life out there other than only, being in the garden, a housewife, and being a farmer and all that. So I think that is a bit of the exposure she got that then helped me to achieve the education or the life that I achieve now. And actually, I think I really count it all to my mother. She was really everything. Unfortunately, she died when I was in senior 3. And everything about me is really, to my understanding, is really about my mother. And when she died, then now, we went to our grandmother. So the grandmother then took up that motherly role and took us through also education. But of course, for my grandmother was again at another, she was really on the other extreme side of being so traditional that for a girl, it's all about marriage. So at that senior 3, when I went for holidays and my mother died and we had buried, we had nowhere to go at that time. And that was around 1990, and it was really the peak, the war, of Corn War now this time. That's when my mother decided that, you know what, you have the siblings here. 2 siblings had died already. We had now had 3 siblings at that time with my grandmother. And the only option that she had at that time was for me to get married.
At
so that
17.
Yes, so that I can help her take care of my siblings. So the only way out for taking care of my siblings was actually for me to get married. And actually they sourced for a man. Yes, and I had a man.
Where was your father?
My father was there at that time because of the war. He had come back to Jinja at that time looking for a job because, remember he was working and saw the life in the village with all the wars and the running. And I think working in the, president's office at that time were issues right from 85. We hardly saw him. He was really on and off, trying to, avoid being arrested and, this kind of stuff. I still don't know, but maybe at that time he was a soldier, because at that time it was very difficult to know who is a soldier and who is not a soldier. So my father was really not available, even at the death of my mother, and so it was my grandmother who actually took up the mantle, and I don't blame her, because that was the only option actually she had. So the only option was for me to marry.
Yes, before we get there, I'm going to take us back a little bit. Because of the instabilities, you said the wars were so many, some classes you didn't study. Did you ever have a friend who was outside your siblings or outside your mother in primary school?
Yes, of course I had so many friends, and of course I had so many friends, and those childhood friends really matter a lot. And at that time it was really your family and your immediate friends, mainly at school, and maybe the neighbors. And so it's and I think it's a very good thing to actually go back. You're reminding me that I need to finish my book. I'm actually writing a book about my life, and kind of like a memoir. And it's reminding me of really that very nice childhood experience, but also the challenges which were around it at that time. And it's now that I'm actually realizing that, I actually came out from like a tunnel, like really a tunnel coming out where everybody's there, and there's a lot of fire around and a lot of turbulence, and somehow I'm here talking to you today. So yes, I had very good friends, but of course at a very early age, those friends were really for playing, not necessarily for any support mechanism per se. And so, yeah, they play quite a big role in my life.
Did you take on these friends from primary to secondary?
Not really. Like I said at that time, from the primary school, very many people dropped out from there. Very few of us joined like at the secondary school. And I think it's my friends from the secondary school that some of us are still together up to now. In fact, we even went back and started our all-girl school association in St. Catherine. So most of us are still there. Of course, some of us didn't make it, some of us passed on. But at least we've managed to come together again, start like that all-girl association and see how we can go back and give back to our community, to our young girls and to our schools, and also be an inspiration to them. And I always do that a lot when I go, like being a member of parliament as well has actually given me more opportunity and space to inspire more children. Like I think 2 weeks ago, I was home in the district taking success cards, for example, and I told them that when I was in senior 4, of course I'd lost my mother. My father was not there because of the war. We didn't know where he was. And people were bringing success cards to their children. Me, I didn't have anybody to visit me. Neither did I have anyone to give me a success card. And I remember, and I told the children that I cried whenever there was a visitation and mothers, people's mothers are coming, their father, their what. Me, I would run away, disappear, and to go and read because I didn't, I would feel so bad. And when you're a child, and I would cry. So I went back. I printed 4,000 success cards for all primary, all secondary, and all the institutions in the district. And I told them, I do not want any of you to cry for a success card like I did. And because I'm now your mother, all of you, I am going to do this on behalf of your parents who may not know the importance of the success card or may not have the ability to print the success, to give you a success card. But because I know what it means and I went through the same. So I do that every year. I started, I think, in 2018. Since 2018 up to now. I don't forget printing success cards for
examination time.
From primary. I do it from primary because of that experience. That if I was capable, I would even do a VD for all the children. Yeah, so that they have that feeling. But all the bad experiences, the difficult experience you go through shouldn't predetermine who you are.
Your father never physically abused you, just your mother?
Of course. When my mother is beaten, at most times, when your father is annoyed and is beating your mother, all the children get their share of the beating and all that kind of stuff. And it was but I think sometimes I also appreciate that. Maybe he's being hard and being violent because when he was dying in his bedroom, at the corner, was a big bunch of sticks, like those things you're putting for flowers. In fact, when he was putting it for flowers, and I was like, okay, these were exactly the same sizes of sticks that my father would keep at the corner. Even when he was dying, it was there. And mainly for beating. And I had very good beating from my father. And you know the reason? You have got to collect water. First of all, we used to collect water from very far. And you would go there and there are so many people. But you come back late, you have a beating. We used to cook with pots, and we would also carry water with pots. So you go with a pot, then maybe you slip a bit, and when the pot falls down, then that is your problem. You are not being, serious. How can you break the pot for collecting water? And what will you use? Jerry cans have just come now. But that was our life. And I share this with my children. I normally share it with the students when I'm talking to them, and I tell them that I appreciate all bits of the difficult life I've gone through, because then that is what has shaped
Who you
that
are.
human being in me. It has shaped who I am. So right now, I know that when I go somewhere, I need to inform home that I'm late. Why? Because of the beating that I
Yes.
had.
Whenever you arrive late.
Whenever I arrive, so arriving late at home or for anything, for me, it comes back from where?
From the beating.
From the beating.
Yes.
So sometimes, yes, we blame our parents and children. These days they talk about human rights, you shouldn't beat children and what, but I think we shouldn't forget that some of those experiences actually shapes who we are.
Yes.
Yeah. So the mother was so Christian. My grandfather was really, that time, the local catechist in the church. And so we grew up reciting those prayer book of the Anglican every evening and every morning. So by 6 you would hear my grandmother started singing specific songs for morning and specific songs for late night. And so all those for me, it really shaped who I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you a troublesome child?
Yes, I was a bit stubborn, I think, and maybe that's the character of
Yes.
it. I'm very outspoken, I'm very outgoing. Wherever there's anything, I would be there.
In the middle of it.
In the middle of it, I'm going to be there. Like in my secondary school, I had this teacher. Whenever she would hear there's some noise in school, he would come with his stick, and when he's coming, he comes and starts asking for me, the first one, because I don't know whether I was the most trouble, some causer or something like that. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes,
So
yes.
maybe that would have accounted to your beatings as well.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
You were a bit more
Yes.
stubborn.
Yes.
Interesting. So how's your let's jump to secondary school, O level and A level. What were some of your favorite subjects?
Oh, I loved science.
Yes.
I did science very well. I did maths, chemistry, physics, and biology and chemistry. In fact, I wanted to be a medical doctor. And at O level, we had this group of the four girls who were really very good, and we would really compete. It was in white, the others were in green. Apparently, all of us are still there.
Oh, that's
One of I
nice.
have got a PhD. My colleague Rehema has also just got a PhD. Then I have Millie, who is now an engineer. Then Helen is now a nurse. I think a bachelor or a master's in nursing. And so these four of us really went for the subjects at that time that was meant that girls could not do that. And eventually in St. Catherine, in our year, we actually did very well. And all of us went ahead and pursued our different science courses. Although for me, because of that, losing my parents, I didn't go to a good school. And then I went for A level in Amolata, where there was no physics, there was no physics teacher, there was no lab. So I could not do chemistry, I could not do biology. Neither could I do other subjects. So I did maths, then geography. But later, again, I went back and did the physics still. I taught
loved it.
I loved it so much, yeah. So that's how I missed out. Maybe I would have been a medical doctor by now. And so I passed my maths very well from O and A level. And that's the maths that I've carried on up to now.
Yes.
That's how I did the commerce accounting in bachelor's, and economics in master's, and also economics and finance at PhD level.
Interesting. So about your your secondary life, you said you're close to your mother, you had strains with your father.
Yeah.
But is there any moment in your high school or primary life where maybe something happened to you and you will never ever forget, something that maybe could have changed your life or changed your perspective on something?
Yes, it's the death of my mother.
Yes.
That hit me. And that was now senior 3 going to senior 4. And because of that situation of being only girls, my mother loved me so much. And I think that love did 2 things to me. One, it made me feel so valuable. irrespective of what the communities were saying,
For you,
irrespective of what
princess.
yes, my father was saying. My mother made me feel that I was on top of the world, you know?
Yes.
And because of that, I would read so hard. I would try to do the best so that this only person who values me, appreciates me. But when she died, that hit me hard. And at that point, I thought that was the end of me. But also, it gave me this rage, you know, like growing up with a lot of anger. And the anger has not yet even gone away. I just still feel so angry that I want to do everything that any woman would go through what my mother went through. And I always feel I need to do everything that no girl child, you know, I may not really finish the whole, but I have to do something to contribute to something that makes no girl child go through what we went through as a child. And to ensure that there is a conducive environment for both the boy and the girl child development and growth in their early childhood. And what we see now in the violence, you know, you know that domestic violence and all that, it stems from the family. And so that moment when my mother died defined me, and I decided that I am going to go to this world, this big thing, because for me my world was my mother. I said I am going to this world and prove two things. One, that a girl child is not as useless as they think. And two, that women need to be empowered for them to be able to face the challenges that comes along with being a woman, or being a wife, or being a girl, or being a grandmother, you know. So those are the two things that that moment
That
really
changed
did to
for
me.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
You were in S3. Were you in boarding school?
Yes, it was a boarding school.
So when you found, how did you
No, my
find
mother
out?
apparently died during holidays, and that I remember it was a time of census of 1991. It was on the 11th of 11th January 1991, and I was in holidays for senior 3 holidays, now going to senior 4. And she was sick, and at that time it was very difficult to access healthcare services. The nearest, my mother is come from the patch, and the nearest was at Tapara Hospital, which is called a bear. And so there were no border motorcycle, and there were very few bicycles at that time, and getting a bicycle would really be
expensive,
very expensive, and a big challenge, you know. And so we would walk to the hospital, and so it was because I was the first girl, so I'm the one who took care of her, and in hospital. And after that we were discharged, and there was a priest where we stay, was about 3 kilometers from the nearest parish for the Catholic Church. So there was and the other hospital was also a Catholic hospital. So there was a priest that was coming towards our grandmother's home, and so he gave us a lift, and because my mother was very weak, and brought my mother back home. And apparently my mother died in my hands. When she was lying on my lap, she was talking about this education thing, talking about so many things. So that alone was so traumatizing.
Yeah, it must have been.
Yes, and seeing your mother just kicks a blanket and she stops breathing.
Yes.
And I didn't know how people die or how you stop breathing.
It was your first time.
It was my first time, and I was young. So then I called my grandmother just to check, and I was still really talking to her, you know. Talking to her, thinking she's young. Oh, Mama, are you sleeping? Are you okay? Because in the night she was feeling a lot of pain. Then my grandmother comes and removes her from my lap, puts her down, and they say, oh, she's dead. And people started crying. And you know that crying of the village at that time, and I think it traumatized me.
It must have.
And yeah, quite a lot of bad experience for a child, really, at that time. And so all those really came back to me and said, no, it's, you know, I think life is much more bigger
Yes,
than I thought.
Than your mommy.
Than I thought, yes, because for me all my life was there.
Yeah.
And then I see this life is gone. And so getting out of that and going to the world was quite a big one.
We are going to get back shortly after our viewers. I want to thank you very much for staying tuned. That is a very heartbreaking yet very inspirational story. We are going to get back and hear how Dr. Agnes started her life after her mom died. So please stay tuned. Thank you, our dear viewers, for staying tuned. I am with our soul sister today, Dr. Agnes, who had just told us about the traumatic experience that she had of her mother passing. Yes. So after that, how does life start after your mom has died?
Of course, that came with a lot of challenges because I needed now to step in and be the head, be the mother to my siblings. And as I said, my father was away trying to, look for life and all that. And so immediately it occurred to me that I needed to be the head of the family. And remember, I was in an environment of my grandmother's home. I wanted to study. I also wanted my siblings to study as well. And so I had to make a decision. What next from here? If I chose to live there with my grandmother, the education bit of it would have stopped then. Because there was no way. First of all, in the family, in her own family, there's nobody who has gone beyond, primary, except one uncle who was working at that time. No, had actually even retired because of the war. He was home. So apparently there was nobody who would really think about, or there was any means for me to study. So I left a patch and trekked to Lira.
Wow.
About, I think, 80 kilometers by foot.
Yourself?
Yes, by foot. And the only thing I had at that time was a blanket for me to use for sleeping and all that. So I came to Lira and started out looking for how to make ends meet. My first place to go was a church, of course. And then I really wanted to see how best. First of all, I needed to finish O-level. My first target was finishing O-level. And so I had got to go to school and see if there's any work I could do in school that would allow me sit. And somehow within that period and the church, I managed to finish A-level. But after and during the O-level, I would not now trek back because there was no transport. There was no money, there's no bicycle, there's no nothing.
Things are unstable.
Exactly, and also the environment, and that was now 1991. Still there were a lot of instabilities. I decided to do odd work, the house girl work within Lira. So that's, first of all, I would get where to stay, but also get where to eat. And also make sure that I finish my education. Yeah, so somehow I maneuvered and sat O-level. And after O-level, still I had to make sure that I make money so that I go to school. And results came back. I was one of the best that year in the whole region. I was admitted in Tororo Girls. At that time, Tororo Girls was really
the big deal.
Yeah, it was Tororo Girls, Namagunga, but for me, I loved Tororo Girls because there was a railway time. You know, we would pass through our railway and go to Tororo, and you know, we would really manage it. But somehow I could not afford
to
go. There was no transport, even the little money that you're supposed to pay the uniform. So it was all very difficult. And it was then that through the connections with some good Samaritans in Lira and the church, I was first identified to work as I do my hard works and the house girl work. I would be going to a private school. So I did a private school within Lira. Imagine with all that marks, with that, and I was admitted for PCB. Wow. I had all the distinctions in all this. And here I am in a private school. I didn't even have fees, but because I can stay with a few relatives and work, be able to work, do my work at a house girl, then go to school. I would be able to make some pancakes to go and sell in school as I come, you know, somehow to see how to survive. But in one term, first term, and given the course, you know, the subjects I was doing, it demanded that I needed to have so much time to study. Somehow some good Samaritans offered me to go to a boarding school, which is in Amolata now, in Awelo Secondary School. But I was, of course, in Royal for some time. And then with the time we got friends, we rented a house and tried to do really all the possible things, stay with friends. Of course, now home, it was quite challenging. Yes. I also tried, you know, trying to do other things, but it was quite difficult. Yeah, but somehow the 2 years went done. Yeah, went by. Yes. Sat my A-level. And after A-level, the university, I couldn't. I feared actually coming to the university. I feared because I couldn't manage the life, and chose that instead of going there, let me go to how do they call it? That time was called National Teachers College, because with my condition, the only hope was to be a teacher. Yes. Because in teacher, immediately you finish, you are given a house and you start teaching. And so my life would have been because it was about a house, housing and food. Yes. And see how I can take care of my siblings. But somehow, God in its own wisdom, from there, I had a friend that we studied with in A-level who had already got a job in an NGO at that time. And so invited me to go for an interview. I'd already finished my diploma. I'd even got a school in my former school, St. Catherine, where I was already teaching. But something in me told me that I think there is something more out there that I need to go for. And so my friend invited me for an interview, and I was admitted as a social worker in an NGO working with children, and that's how my career started. So from that NGO to another one, to another, and in the process now I felt that as I was growing in my career, I needed also now to grow with my education. So then I joined Bachelor of Commerce Accounting in Makerere. And as I was working as well and coming like that, that is when now I started doing both career growth, but also academic growth. So from degree to master's, now to PhD.
Amazing.
Yes. And then now after all that processes, I realized I'd done it all. I'd done NGO up to the national coordinator level. I'd done some international, assignments. That's when I started doing consultancies with World Bank, with UN, and all that. Then after all this, I came back and said, now, what next? Then I said, I think the only thing that is remaining is to represent. Yes. And be a voice to the voiceless. And maybe if I go to government, I would be able to be in that decision-making table where I can also contribute to making a decision that can improve the lives of my people. So for me, that was a motivation of joining politics, that government is so huge, and they make so big decisions, they allocate resources at the national level. And so I needed to be there so that I can talk for my people, I can make decisions, make laws that can protect them, and also allocate, be part of a decision-making table that will allocate resources that can address the community challenges of my people. So that's why after all the work and all the studying, I said, let me go back home. In fact, when I finished my PhD, I had all the offers, even from my university, to work, to stay. I lectured. I was a lecturer at my university. I had other universities in Germany and in Canada where I would do guest lecturing. I go and lecture and come back. But somehow I felt I needed to go back home.
Your people were
from the UK and where I said, this is good enough for me as a person. Of course, it's the life that anybody else would love to have. But I said, wait a minute, who am I? to be here. And what can I do with this opportunity to go and make not change, but make a contribution to the development of my community. And the day I was leaving UK and going back, indeed all my friends, my relatives said something is very wrong with me. How can you study and choose to go back to the village? Really? And actually that was around 2015 when I came back to the village and went back to my hope thing and started going to dig with the women to grow rice and then really be there in the community with them, mobilizing, you know, growing the rice, getting the market for them to sell. I brought tractors, you know, that kind of thing. And everybody thought I was crazy because everybody expects that when you study, you get a job.
Yeah.
And when you get a job, all is done, you're comfortable. You have your children and that is it.
Move on with your life.
Move on with your life. But I said, no, I'm going back to the village.
Yes.
So literally, one would say that, so why did you study then? So I always answer them that my education was not meant for a job.
Yes.
No. Part of the job I did it, but now part of the community is what I'm on now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting. So as we wrap up, is there any words of advice that you'd like to give young girls, young women? You know, there's a girl out there who's probably going through the same thing as you did. So what words of encouragement or just advice that you'd give them?
I think for the girls, I always hear most people say, oh, I'm an orphan. Oh, there's nobody to pay for me fees. Oh, so the option is to get a man and go. It's not a problem. I got married as well and have 3 very beautiful children, 2 girls and 1 boy. But besides all that, as a young girl, you need to determine what you want in life. Many times we get diverted with very small petty things and we leave the bigger picture of life. So for me, my first advice or word to all the young girls or even women out there, you need to decide what you want. Nobody is going to make a decision for you. It is a choice. You choose to be what you are or choose to go out there and adventure life. If it is education, choose to study and focus on that. What disturbs our people or our young people now is you want to study at the same time you want a husband, the same time you want a car, you want all these luxuries.
You want it all at the same time.
You cannot have everything at the same time. Some of us we forwent most of the things in life, all the luxuries for purposes to focus, and all those things now come. Now for me, if I want anything, I can get it anytime. So young girls, make a choice to a good life, a choice to study, a choice to make a good woman, a good housewife. You have to make a choice. And that choice, you have to be committed to the choice you've made. Because making a choice is one thing, but also the commitment to follow it to the dot is another. And for me, that will then help you unveil who you are. Secondly, for the issue of stereotypes of who decides who a woman is. Decide yourself who you are. The value in you, nobody will identify them for you. It is you to identify who you are, the values you have, and the contribution you can make. And finally, I think in all this life that we live, all of us have got different backgrounds. But at the end of it, what is it that you're going to do to make a difference in people's life? In somebody's life, it may not be people. It may be one time, I think, in the same TV show, I said, I think as women, there's a program, we need to create a program of adopt a child or adopt a village or adopt a woman. If you go to your village and just pick that one woman or that one young girl, you don't need to give money, by the way. Sometimes just mentoring or talking to somebody means a lot. All these experience I'm sharing with you, it came because I had women in church, older women. I had working women that I would go look up to. to talk to, and they would talk to me and advise me. Because remember, I didn't have any parents, so literally I would be the most spoiled girl because I would do anything I want. Yes. There was nobody to beat me again at the older age. But somehow the people around you, the social networks is very critical. And so for the young girls out there, you need to identify one or two of these people that you can rely on, that you can run to help you make decisions that sometimes you're stuck with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That has been a very inspirational story and very touching. I know that many of you have picked something, and I would like to thank you very much for your time, your words of encouragement. Our viewers, thank you for sharing and commenting on our different social media platforms. I want to thank our Daughters Exclusive, located at Spear House, Ginger Road, for hosting us. Please come have a look at the beautiful furniture, very comfortable and very affordable. Until next time, have a blessed evening.